Go ahead and go to your history notebook or your social studies notebook on slide number 49. We did go out of order, and you've already learned about the Great Wall, and you've already heard about Wudi, so this should be a recap. Now, the Han Dynasty followed the rebellion after Qin Shi Huangdi's son was dethroned, beginning around 206 BCE. The first Han Emperor, Liu Bang, started out as only a minor official whose parents had been peasants. This means he is a part of the lower class and not the aristocracy. Under his great-grandson, Wudi's rule, the Great Wall and the armies were strengthened. The Han Dynasty began trading with the Western world through the Silk Road, a trade route from China all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. Now, I want to know, or let you guys know, that just because it is called the Silk Road, it is not a road made of silk. A lot of this is going to be footpaths, not really roads until much, much, much later. And there was no really silk involved except for what was being traded on it. Just like the Red Sea wasn't actually red. The Silk Road is not actually a road of silk. Now, the main export or thing being sold from China was silk made by silkworms. Europeans weren't used to such soft and smooth material, which was great for underwear, which I agree. I don't want scratchy bum. Now, to let you guys know, how silk is made is super crazy. Just like a caterpillar will make a chrysalis and turn into a butterfly, the silkworm will make a little chrysalis made out of a fine little wrap that they spit up. However, people will then take that cocoon, unravel it, and make it into a garment, a clothing item. So we're going to watch quickly how silk is made.
Silk fabric originated in China at least 5,000 years ago and became a coveted luxury. Silk thread is produced by silkworms when they make their cocoons. Sericulture, or commercially breeding silkworms for silk production, is practiced in several Asian countries. From home goods to accessories and clothing, there are few textiles as elegant and luxurious, or as prized throughout the ages, as silk. It's hard to believe this beautiful fabric comes from worms. The female silkworm lays up to 400 eggs in one shot, then promptly dies. Each egg, about 2 weeks later, hatches into a larva. The larva feeds on fresh mulberry leaves continuously, increasing its body weight 10,000-fold and growing to a length of about 3 inches. Then, as it enters the pupa phase of its life cycle, it excretes liquid raw silk from salivary glands in its mouth. When that liquid silk contacts with the air, it hardens into a single thread. Pupating larva winds that thread around itself into a thick, cozy cocoon. Normally, the pupa inside becomes a moth, and the cocoon breaks as it emerges. However, this severs the continuous silk thread, so to keep the thread intact, they boiled the cocoon for about 3 minutes to kill the pupa inside before it transforms into a moth. Boiling the cocoons also makes the wound thread easier to unravel by melting away most of the sericin, the gelatinous protein that binds it. To harvest the silk, they take threads from 30 to 50 cocoons at a time. They feed them all together through a hole in the bamboo stick onto a hand-operated reel. Then, slowly and carefully, they turn the reel, unraveling the cocoons. As the thread passes together through the stick, the remaining sericin glues them together, forming a single thicker thread.
So a whole bunch of cocoons are
The
making
silk
that thread.
threads coming together are so fine, only about 1/100th of a millimeter in diameter, that it takes 2,000 to 3,000 cocoons to produce a pound of silk thread. Unraveling cocoons is a time-consuming process because a single thread can be as long as 9 professional soccer fields. To make this feather-like silk thread easier to handle, they weigh it down with sand before rolling it into a bundle. wash away the sand and remaining saracen, then bleach the thread so it will uniformly absorb the synthetic dye. It's critical to monitor the ratio of dye to hot water, as well as water temperature and soaking time, as all these factors combined affect the quality of the color. After rinsing away the excess dye with lukewarm water, they hang the thread to dry. They mount the bundles of dry dyed silk thread on a big machine, which transfers them to smaller rollers. Those rollers then go on an automated machine, which transfers the thread to small bobbins. To craft silk fabric, weavers will pass bobbins of thread horizontally between vertical threads on a traditional hand-operated loom. Another machine, meanwhile, winds thread around spools. A worker then installs a set number of spool threads on a mechanism, which aligns them vertically on the loom, parallel to each other. Fabric that's about 3 feet wide typically requires 4,000 vertical threads. By stepping on the loom's foot pedal, the weaver repeatedly raises every second vertical thread, and with a tug of a cord, passes a shuttle containing a bobbin of thread horizontally in between. This intertwining of horizontal and vertical threads weaves the silk fabric. To create a pattern, the weaver uses multiple shuttles containing threads of different colors, thicknesses, and textures. Some patterns, such as an intricate weave called brocade, are so intricate that even the most experienced weavers produce just 2 to 6 inches of fabric per day. Now that's wearable art.
Oakley doke. Now, we are going to read a Newsy LA article and decide which invention from the Han Dynasty do you think is the best. The cultural heights of China's Han Dynasty. And like usual, I'm going to go to 820. The Han Dynasty will always be remembered for its use of the Silk Road. It was a trade route that connected Asia with Europe. It helped to exchange goods like silk and spices with lands as far east as India and the Roman Empire. West. It also brought ideas such as Buddhism to the rest of the world. China's most famous landmark is the Great Wall. It was built mostly during the Han period. Its walls protected the Chinese people from foreign invasions. This is going to be a little bit of a recap of all of our other dynasties. The Shang dynasty fell in 1111 BC and was replaced by the Zhou 1111 to 221 BC and the Qin 221 to 206 BC dynasties. They continued the advances made by the early Chinese. Building skills improved and the use of iron became common. However, there was a lack of unity. Feudalism became popular under the Zhou. This is the system in which the king shared his power with the area's lords. In turn, the lords paid for their lands and titles. Remember how you would pay me in the class with either wheat or rice or barley. As the Zhou weakened, the lords fought amongst themselves, you fighting over those candy bars. This Warring States period, 403 to 221 BC, only ended when all of northern China was united under the Qin. The Qin created needed change, but they were harsh rulers. They supported legalism. This belief taught that people could not be trusted, and society only worked well because of tough laws and severe punishments. After only 15 years, the Qin dynasty fell, replaced by the Han. They established one of the most successful periods in Chinese history, starting in 202 BC, the rise of the Han. Under the Han, lords regained their powerful positions, and China prospered in peace again. Paper and the wheelbarrow were invented during this time. Legend states that the paper was created in AD, which is, we refer to it as BCE, 105, but archaeological proof suggests that it was used 200 years earlier. Paper was not used much in Europe until more than 1,000 years later. Empress Wuti was given credit for the major success of the early Han. He ruled for 54 years, from 140 to 87 BC. He expanded the borders in many directions, but it was his expansion to the west that influenced Han. To the west. Wu Ti had heard rumors of rich lands to the west. In 138 BC, the emperor sent the explorer Changxian to the group of 100 men westward. 13 years later, Changxian returned with only one of his original men. He told stories of capture and imprisonment. He did not succeed in reaching the lands of Persia, Arabia, or the Roman Empire, but Changxian did learn about them. Wu Ti sent Changxian west again a few years later. Changxian's troops started to use the Silk Road. This trade route went as far east as the Caspian Sea. The Chinese received goods such as ivory, glass, wool, tapestries, and food. In return, China sent furs, spices, jade, and iron objects to lands in the west. These foreign lands also received silk. Most people outside of China had never seen silk, but by the 1st century, people in Rome became obsessed with buying silk clothing from China. Another brick in the Great Wall. The Han also kept building the Great Wall of China. This is one of the greatest Chinese inventions. Originally began during the Qin Dynasty, Wu Ti restored the wall. He also continued it another 300 miles into the Gobi Desert. This protected against attacks from Central Asia. The Great Wall is now regarded as one of the wonders of the world, and the Great Wall came at a high price. Sometimes 100 or 1 mile of wall was created in a single day. An average of 10 workers died for every mile that was built. Highs and lows. Acupuncture, the piercing of needles into the skin, became popular around 100 AD as a treatment for common illnesses, as did herbal medicine. The Han also studied astronomy. They created atlases of the sky, which are like roadmaps. The atlases showed the shapes of 29 different types of comets, as well as the accurate positions of Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn. The Han Dynasty lasted more than 400 years, but by 200 AD, people thought the government had become corrupt, and there were other problems. The Han Dynasty finally lost power in 220 AD. After that, China saw 400 years of political chaos, aka anarchy. So, we have astronomy with atlases of the sky. We have acupuncture and herbal medicine. We have reconstruction of the Great Wall of China. We have silk and the Silk Road. We have paper and the wheelbarrow. What do you think, after you answer 3 out of 4 questions right, was the best invention of the Han Dynasty?